Thank you, Chairman Grijalva, Chairman Neguse, Ranking Member Fulker, and members of the committee. I want to thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Stefanie Smallhouse. My husband and I currently own and operate a cow-calf operation in southern Arizona. We are the 5th generation on the ranch and hope to pass it on to the 6th. I am also the president of the Arizona Farm Bureau Federation, which represents more than 2,300 farmers and ranchers across our state. On behalf of those members, I appreciate this opportunity to express our opposition to Great Bend of the Gila Conservation Area proposed by H.R. 8719. Living and working in rural Arizona, I have a unique understanding of the environmental and cultural value that Arizona's public lands have to offer. I also have a unique understanding of the challenges that federal land use restrictions impose on those who seek to manage, steward, and produce a valuable food source on public lands.
Ms. Smallhouse, sorry to interrupt you, and we'll preserve your time. If you might turn your camera on, we're having a bit of difficulty seeing you. Terrific.
Can you see me now?
We can. You may proceed.
Okay. Sorry about that. Living and working in rural Arizona, I have a unique understanding of the environmental and cultural value that Arizona's public lands have to offer. I also have a unique understanding of the challenges that federal land use restrictions impose on those who seek to manage, steward, and produce a valuable food source on public lands. Federal law mandates that our nation manage its public lands for multiple use. Conservation area and wilderness criteria threaten the multiple use of public lands by restricting grazing, mineral extraction, and resource harvesting. They also prohibit the deployment of motorized tools and mechanized vehicles, severely limiting the effectiveness of watershed management, trail maintenance, soil treatment, noxious weed control, waste management, and fire protection. The proposed Great Bend of the Gila Conservation Area and wilderness expansion, proposed by H.R. 8719, would threaten sound management of an area that supports grazing, sand and gravel, sellable minerals, and contains transmission lines that may one day support renewable solar energy production. The area also overlaps with popular hunting and outdoor recreation areas already managed by state and local governments. By creating 2 new national conservation areas and expanding wilderness areas by tens of thousands of acres, this bill will remove options for sound land management and limit the scope of critical private partnerships. Moreover, the cultural and environmental resources contemplated by this measure are already under significant protection. Arizona is currently home to 24 national monuments and parks. Conservation areas in Arizona comprise more than 111,000 acres, a significant portion of the nearly 50% of Arizona's land that is federally controlled. Less than 20% of our state land area is privately owned, and this bill would increase federal land management by more than 430,000 acres. With private and state land already encumbered, any proposed expansion of federal land management is met with great concern for long-term environmental and economic sustainability. Finally, I have serious concerns about the impact this bill would have on livestock grazing. Public lands grazing is integral to ranches in Arizona and across the West. H.R. 8719 would restrict grazing within the conservation and wilderness areas to its current footprint, potentially leaving no room for expanding that footprint in ways consistent with environmental and ecological conditions. Livestock grazing is critical for managing and preventing invasive plant species, decreasing hazardous fuel loads, and preventing wildfires, supporting wildlife habitats, and cultivating viable rural economies. The restrictions outlined in this bill would severely limit the effectiveness of grazing as a critical land management tool, setting a dangerous precedent for future land use restrictions and threatening a critical aspect of our nation's food supply. Public lands are critical to the success of agriculture, and agricultural managers are likewise critical partners for the conservation of public lands. In relation to prior iterations of this bill, we have expressed serious concerns over the top-down approach to imposing restrictions with major impacts on our farmers and ranchers. The language in this bill is contrary to the extensive stakeholder process undertaken by the BLM to develop the Lower Sonoran Decision Area Resource Management Plan, which was developed in compliance with the Federal Land Management Policy Act, the Endangered Species Act, NEPA, Archaeological Resources Protection Act, and multiple use policies of the BLM to include Native American Tribal Consultation and Section 106 National Historic Preservation Act. It's noted in the plan that considerations for selecting the approved plan, the BLM did not receive comments from tribal governments indicating that the proposed resource management plan and environmental impact statement was inconsistent with their existing policies and plans. While we remain opposed to H.R. 8719, we appreciate that we have now been given the opportunity to express our concerns about the expansion of wilderness and conservation areas. Furthermore, we remain committed to working alongside federal land management agencies for the benefit of all whose livelihoods depend on our nation's natural resources. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to answering questions.